Hey everybody, my name is Philip Howard and this is a tutorial on how to query your stream data using Azure Stream Analytics. You will need an Azure account to complete this demo. You'll also need a PowerBi account. Both have free options available. I've put links in the description so you can sign up for those. I've also left links for the Microsoft documentation that we'll be following along with, as well as the Data Simulator app that you're going to need to download to complete this demo. Now, the scenario that Microsoft has provided for us here is if you've got a telecommunications company and they want to be able to detect fraudulent calls in real time so that way they can alert the customers and shut down service for that specific number as soon as possible. And in order to do that, we're going to be ingesting that caller data using an Azure Event Hub, and we're going to be streaming that into Azure Stream Analytics and then pushing that data out to Power BI so we can visualize it. So let's get started. We're going to go ahead, if you've already got an Azure account now, we're going to just go ahead and go over to portal.azure.com. We're going to log into your account. Alright, if this is the first time you've ever logged into an Azure account, this is what you can expect to see. My dashboard is going to be a little bit different from yours, but essentially it's the same thing here. You're going to have your dashboard. You can lay it out however you like. You've got all the different possible resources you can have on the left. Anytime you want to create anything new, you just click on New up here. And actually that's what we're going to do. The first step to this, we're going to create a new Azure Event Hub. So after you've clicked New, go ahead and scroll down to Internet of Things, and we're going to click on Event Hubs right here. Now we're going to go ahead and give it a name. So I'm just going to say, let's say SAEHNS Demo. And what you're going to notice right away is Azure doesn't like that at all. It's a fully qualified URL. You can see it with the .servicebus.windows.net. So it actually has to be unique for this domain here. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there we go. So you can type in whatever you want, just to keep track of it and make sure it's unique. We're going to leave the pricing tier at standard. The subscription will be whatever you signed up with here. Let's create a new resource group. Let's call this RG Fraud Detection. Okay, we're going to leave that at ECUS for our location, and we're going to click Create. Okay, deployment's in progress now. It's going to take a few minutes here, so I'm just going to go ahead and speed up the video, and I'll meet you back when it's complete. Okay, our Event Hub has successfully deployed. If we actually go over to our resource groups, you can see our brand new resource group that we just created. Go ahead and open that up. And there's our Event Hub. Now what we've actually created is just an Event Hub namespace. We haven't created any Event Hubs yet. So in our namespace now, if you just go over here, we can add an Event Hub. So go ahead and give that a click. And we're going to name that. This one doesn't have to be unique. It's just unique for the namespace. So we'll say SAEH Fraud Detection Demo. And you're going to want to keep track of these names because we're going to need it when we're configuring our app here for sending data here. We're going to leave the rest of these as is. So go ahead and click Create. It should deploy a little bit faster than the namespace did. There we go. Alright, so our Event Hub has finished creating. Took a few seconds. Now, if we were to go down under Entities here on the left side and click Event Hubs, there it is. Alright, so we've got our Event Hub. Now the next step is to create a shared access policy so that way our Stream Analytics job can read from it and our application can post data to it. So we've clicked on the Event Hub here, and over on the left under Settings you've got Shared Access Policies. So open that up. And there aren't any policies yet, which makes sense. We just created our Event Hub. So let's go ahead and click Add. And over under policy name, we're just going to go ahead and call that SA, say policy manage demo. And we're going to go ahead and click manage. That's going to automatically check send and listen as well. Let's go ahead and click create. Alright, so there's our shared access policy. And now we just need to get our connection string here. And there's going to be two of them. You got your primary and your secondary. So come down 3 rows here under connection string primary key and click the blue icon here, and that's going to copy it for us. And we're going to post that into a text editor. I'm just going to use Notepad here, and we're going to save it for later. So there we go. There's our entire connection string here. Let's go ahead and minimize that for a second. Alright, and that's all there is to it. Our event handler is ready to go. The next step is we have to configure our data simulator application. If you haven't downloaded that yet, the link is in the description below, so go ahead and download that. And then it's just going to be a zip file, so unzip it in place, and it should look something like this here once you've opened up the folder here. Once it's open, you're going to go down to telcodatagen.exe.config. We're going to open that up in a text editor, or see, I prefer using Visual Studio Code. Notepad++ works just as well too, but I'm going to go ahead and open this up in Visual Studio Code. We only have to edit 2 different fields here, and they're both going to be under App Settings here. The first is going to be the Event Hub name, and the second is going to be your connection string. So go ahead and open back up the text editor that we saved the connection string in, and we're actually going to break this into 2 pieces here. For the Event Hub name, we're actually looking at the entity path here. So everything after that, that's going to be right here, the SAEH fraud detection demo. So we're going to copy that and paste that into the value right here. Make sure to keep the quotation marks. There we go. So we've got SAEH fraud detection demo. And secondly, we've got the connection string here. So it's going to be everything before this semicolon. So we're equal sign all the way to endpoint. So copy that. And, oh, yeah, paste over everything except for the quotation marks. There we go. It should look something like this. Alright, that's all you have to do here. The app is configured, so go ahead and save it and exit out of that. Alright, that's all you have to do in this folder. The app is actually set to run in the command line, so we're actually going to have to open up a command window. So go ahead and do that. Navigate to the your Telco DataGen folder here. So I'm just going to copy the path that we have here. Okay. And then we're going to run TelcoDataGen.exe, and it's going to expect 3 different parameters. The first is the number of total messages that we're going to send, the number of phone calls that we're going to record here. So let's go ahead and say 1,000. What percentage or probability of those that are going to be fraudulent, so we're going to say 20%, and how long we actually want the app to run. So we're going to go ahead and say 2 hours. And if you enter that, then shortly you're going to start seeing all the different calls here. Now, it's not, in fact, it's probably impossible to actually see what's going on here or what kind of fields we're displaying. But some of the data that we're sending would be like the call receive time. That's going to be the timestamp for the call start time. The switch num is going to be what country the call originated from. You're going to have the calling number, which is the number of the caller. The calling international mobile subscriber identity, which is the unique identifier of the caller. That's an important one because we're going to be using that to identify the fraudulent calls. There's going to be the recipient call number and the recipient international mobile subscriber identity number as well. So we're just going to let this run in the background. This is hitting our Event Hub, and now we have to be able to get the data from the Event Hub. So we're going to create a Stream Analytics job. So we're going back to our Azure portal here, and go ahead and close out of all the Event Hub windows. And now we're going to go back to New, go to Internet of Things, and click on Stream Analytics job. Alright, and we're going to name that SA Fraud Detection Demo. This doesn't have to be unique either. This can be whatever you want it to be called. We're going to use the existing resource group that we just created, and we're going to keep it in East US. Whenever you've got things reading to or posting data from resources, you're going to want to keep them in the same location. Go ahead and create that. And this might take a minute as well, so I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead, and I'll meet you back when... Oh, no, there it is. It's already deployed. This is a lot faster than I expected. So, okay, let's go back to our resource groups. Open that up. And there it is. There's our Stream Analytics job. So go ahead and open that up. Now, configuring a Stream Analytics job takes 3 steps. You're going to have to configure your inputs. You're going to have to configure the query of the data that you're streaming in. And then where are you sending that data to? So let's go ahead and start with inputs. It's obviously empty because we just created it. So we're going to create an input for our Event Hub. So we're going to go ahead and click Add. For input alias, this can be whatever you want to call it. It's just going to be an identifier for your input. So we're going to go ahead and call this call stream. It's going to be a data stream. Source is going to be an Event Hub. There's sources for blob storage and IoT Hub. So we're just going to leave this as is. For input option, the Microsoft documentation is actually telling you to use Event Hub from current subscription. What I've found more often than not is if you've just created it, there's not going to be anything available. It just takes a minute for it to recognize that you've created anything. So what we're actually going to have to do is click on Provide Event Hub Settings Manually. And here's where you're going to put that service bus namespace and all the other information that we just created. So this is going to be, if you remember, SAEHNS demo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The Event Hub name, SAEH Fraud Detection Demo. The policy name, we had SA Policy Manage Demo. And it's okay if you don't remember this. You just have to exit out, go back to your Event Hub, and just look up the names. They're really easy to find here. The policy key, you've still got your text editor open, is going to be right here. It's this shared access key. So copy everything after the equal sign all the way up to the equal sign. So you're copying everything from the beginning character all the way up to the last equal sign. And we're going to paste that into here. The Event Hub consumer group we're going to leave blank. We didn't create any consumer groups for the Event Hub. That's actually how you differentiate who's going to be reading from what. If you don't leave, or if you don't specify a consumer group, it's going to default to a default consumer group. And that's fine for this demo here. We're going to leave everything else as is and click Create. So it's going to add the input, and then it's going to test it to make sure that you didn't mess up any of the fields here, and it can actually read from the Event Hub. Okay, we've got a successful connection test, which means that it can actually reach the Event Hub. Now let's exit out of this. Now, before we configure the actual fraud detection and the output to Power BI, let's go ahead and take a look at the query window here. This is a good way of actually testing your data to make sure that you're getting everything you expect to get. Now, what you're going to notice here, it's all by default. It's going to give you the select star from these two placeholders, your output alias and your input alias. You're actually selecting into your output once you've got that created from your input. Now, for right now, let's just get rid of the output here because we just want to take a look at and what kind of data we're streaming in. And we're going to replace this placeholder here with call stream. That's what we called our input. Now before you can actually test this and run this query, we have to actually get a sample of the data that's being streamed in. So you're just going to go over to this ellipses here by call stream, and you're going to click sample data from input. It's going to give you a start time from where you want to start sampling and for what period of time that you want to sample from. This is all fine. 3 minutes is good. We'll go ahead and click OK. And it's going to sample data from the data that's being brought in from the Event Hub. Now this might take a minute here, so I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. Okay, there we go. We've got our sample call stream data here. By the way, if there are any errors connecting to the Event Hub, or if you're actually not receiving any data from the Event Hub, like let's say that you didn't have the simulator running, you'd actually get an error. It would say, hey, there was no data available to sample from. So if you didn't have the simulator running, this actually wouldn't work. Alright, so now that we've got this, we can actually run this query. So you just click test right here. Okay, and here are all of the fields that we're getting here, and it's pretty difficult to read in this window. So let's actually narrow that down a bit. So instead of select star, let's actually say select call receive time. That's our timestamp. The switch num, which is going to give us our location. The calling IMSI, that's that unique identifier. Here's the originating phone number, and then who were we calling? Alright, now we've already sampled the data, so we don't have to do that again. We're going to be just querying the same data that we brought in already. So go ahead and click test. Alright, that's a lot better. So we've got those 5 fields here. You can say it works just like SQL. In fact, it's called Stream Analytics Query Language. It works the exact same way, except for a few additional functions that are unique to the streaming analytics. Now, before we actually start moving on, I do want to make or take a minute to talk about one more thing. That's going to be how you aggregate data. Now, because Stream Analytics is essentially endless, because you're bringing in data constantly, if you want to do an aggregation like say a count, any kind of group by, you actually have to tell Stream Analytics what time period you want to aggregate over, and we're going to do that by time stamping the data here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this, and I'll show you what I mean. We're going to type in system.timestamp, and we're going to call that window end. We're going to call the location here, the switch num. We're going to count all of the calls made as call count. And then we're going to tell the Stream Analytics job here that we want to timestamp this call stream using this timestamp that we've actually got already, the call received time. So we timestamp by call received time. And now that we've done that, now we can group our fields here. So we're going to group by, and we're going to use something called a tumbling window, which allows us to group by these by whatever unit of time we want to use here. And we're going to say seconds, actually, say 5 seconds. And then we're going to group by our location, the switch num. And let's see if this works here. We're going to go ahead and test this out. And there we go. So here's our window end. These are our timestamps, and we're grouping by these timestamps and then by location the number of calls made by those countries. Okay, now before we can move further, we actually need to configure an output, and then we'll come back to this query window and set up our fraud detection. So go ahead and exit out. And it's okay to discard the unsaved edits. Alright, and we're going to go ahead and click on output. Now again, you've got your empty output here. We're going to go ahead and add one. And this now it's pretty important, if you haven't registered yet for a PowerBi account or for one of their trial accounts. If you don't have one, you're not going to be able to do this step. So go ahead and do that first. If you've already got that now, for output alias, I'm just going to go ahead and call this call stream PowerBi. And then for sync, instead of Event Hub, we're going to go down to PowerBi. And they're going to actually have this already set up where you can just click Authorize Connection, and you're going to sign in to your PowerBi account. So I'm going to sign into mine. If I could type here. There we go. Alright, and once you're logged in here, everything else goes as is. You can just put it in the default group workspace. Data set name, it could be whatever you want to call it. I'm going to just go ahead and call it, say, Stream Analytics Data Set. And then the table name, we're going to call fraudulent calls. And go ahead and click Create. Now it's going to do the same things when you were creating your input. It's going to add the output, and it's going to test the connection. And if all goes well, we should see a successful connection here. There we go, a successful connection test. Okay, great. So let's exit out of here. We've got our input, we've got our output. So now let's actually make the query that's going to detect fraud. Now, we're getting all of this data from we're getting all this telecommunications data. How are we going to detect which ones are fake and which ones are real? Well, we may not be able to tell which is which, but we can tell we can pick out suspicious behavior. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to join the stream on itself and select out the calls that were made that have the exact same unique identifier, that IMSI number, that were made within 5 seconds of each other, but in different countries. Now, obviously, that doesn't make sense. You know, if you had a phone call, or rather, if you had a phone make a call in the United States and 5 seconds later made in Russia, obviously something must be off. So that query is actually going to look a little bit. It's going to look something like this here. We're just going to write it from scratch. It's going to be select system.timestamp as window end. We're going to count all of those calls, and we're going to call them fraudulent calls. And we're going to send that into our output that we just configured, the PowerBi output. And we're going to pull that from call stream, and we're going to designate it as CS1. We're going to timestamp that by the call received time, and we're going to join that on itself. And we're going to call that CS2. And then we're going to join that on the unique identifiers. So that way the unique identifier, the IMSI number here, is identical. And here's the part that's important. When you're joining a stream on itself, you have to actually designate what time period that you're going to be working with. If I'm doing joins on data, it's similar to having to sample the data. I have to pick out a certain amount of time that these identifiers are equal. They're the same. So we actually have to use this date diff, and it's a little bit different from SQL Server's date diff. This one is meant for Stream Analytics here. We're going to say seconds here, CS1 and CS2, since we've just timestamped those. between 1 and 5, where CS1 switch num, so the location of the first call is not equal to the location of the second call. And we're going to group that by a tumbling window here. Alright, and it doesn't like something about this, so let's look into it. You know what? There we go. So in this particular case, if it doesn't like the name, you may, if you wanted to take it literally, you may actually have to write quotes around it. All right, go. And so once we've got our query completed here, go ahead and click Save. All right, so now this query is saved, and as the Stream Analytics job is running, all the data is going to be queried according to this. We're actually pulling out the numbers that have the same IMSI, and they come from 2 different locations. So everything is completed now, so all we have left to do is start the job, and that's right up here in the top left here. We're going to go ahead and start it now. And that's actually going to take a minute here. So while that's happening, I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to go over to PowerBI.com. I'm going to go ahead and log into my account. And let me make sure this is the right one. Yep. Alright, now I can't do anything just yet. It's going to take a minute for this to start, but when it does, it'll automatically create the data set that we need for Power BI. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead, and we'll meet you right back here when it's done. Okay, our streaming job is started successfully. It's now running. Data is coming through our inputs, getting filtered through our query, and doing our output. And in just a few moments, we should see the data set in our workspace here. And actually, no, there it is already, our SA data set. So, if this is the first time you've opened up your Power BI here, you'll likely see this Welcome to Power BI thing. So, if you see this actually, here, let's go over to my workspace. You should be able to click skip, and then you'll come to your workspace right here. So I don't have any workspaces, I have no dashboards, nothing like that. So I'm just going to go up to the top and click create, and we're going to create a dashboard. And we're going to go ahead and call this fraudulent calls, and click create. So now we've got our blank dashboard. If you go over to the top here, we can click add tile. And we're going to scroll down to real-time data here, and it's going to be custom streaming data. So click that and click next. Now we only have the one streaming data set. If you don't see this, then you might want to refresh Power BI or make sure that your output is configured right. But it should already be here. Just go ahead and click that and then click next. And the first thing we're going to create is just a counter of how many fraudulent calls we're seeing at any given moment. So we're just going to leave this as card, and we're going to click add value and click on fraudulent calls. If you remember our query, that was the count star that we did. And you can already see it. It's already counting every second or every few seconds. It's actually going to be changing how many calls that we're seeing at that time. So go ahead and click next, and we'll just go ahead and call this fraudulent calls. And click apply. And it's as easy as that. We are seeing this in real time. This is how many fraudulent calls we've got at any point in time. We can also do a different visual here. We're going to go ahead and click add tile. Same thing, real-time data. Next. Click on our streaming data set. Next. And let's do a line chart here. For our axis here, we're going to add window end. We're going to do it by time. and our values are going to be fraudulent calls. And this is going to be, let's see, our time window to display. It's going to be a full minute, and that's fine. Let's go ahead and click next. And yeah, we'll just leave this as is, just apply. And here you can see the line chart moving in real time. We're getting our data as it's coming in. Let me move this out of the way. There's our data. It's being streamed to Azure Event Hub, which is then being collected and queried by the Stream Analytics job, and then it's being sent to PowerBi. And there's a whole bunch of different applications you can use this for. Besides, it's great for IoT solutions, anything where you're going to get massive amounts of data that you need to see in real time. There is one last thing that I wanted to mention before I closed out here, and that is PowerBi is actually limited in the amount of data it can receive at any one time. Streaming Visuals supports packets of 15 kilobytes, and PowerBi can be called roughly once per second. And there's actually an equation in the documentation that for best practices on how much data you can send to PowerBi. But a lot of the heavy lifting for reducing the amount of throughput, or rather the amount of data that can be sent at one time, has to be done by the Stream Analytics job. And that's where the tumbling window comes in, and why we actually limited that to every 1 second. Alright, that's it for this demo. If you have any questions regarding IoT, Stream Analytics, or just Azure services in general, feel free to email me at the address listed on the screen here. If there's anything you'd like to see explained in more detail, or if there's any other Azure services you'd like to see demoed, please comment your ideas below, and we'll do our best to get back to them. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.